There's a voice inside most of us that would never be tolerated if it came from outside of us. It says things like, "You always do this. What is wrong with you? You should be further along by now." Today, I want to talk to you about self-compassion, the neuroscience of it, the clinical evidence behind it, and 6 practices that actually work. If you're one who likes to just jump right into the application, go ahead and check out the chapter in this video devoted to the specific practices that will help you finally change the way you talk and treat yourself. If you want to dive a little deeper into why and how this all works, stick with me. Let me paint a picture you might recognize. A 17-year-old boy, I'll call Mark, came into my office. He was a really good student, mostly A's across the board. But on this particular day, he had just gotten a C on a test. And the way he was talking about himself was absolutely brutal. He was saying things like, "I'm stupid. I'll never amount to anything." Not because he was analyzing what went wrong, but because he was punishing himself for it. That one C became the entire story of who he was. So we slowed it down. I asked him, what else is true? We started looking at the full picture, all the other tests, all the other classes, all the A's he had earned. And what we saw was that one negative data point was getting all the power, while everything else was just being ignored. I asked him, if your best friend had gotten the same grade with the same record, what would you say to him? He said, I'd tell him he was doing great, that one test doesn't define him, that he should learn from it and just move on. And I asked, why don't you say that to yourself? He didn't have an immediate answer, like most of us don't. Here's what's happening under the hood. When you criticize yourself harshly, your amygdala fires. Cortisol floods your system. Your body enters the same threat defense state it would if there was something dangerous that was happening in the external world. And in that state, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for clear thinking and problem solving, learning and wise decision making, goes completely offline. The very behavior you believe is making you more accountable is actually making you less capable. The inner critic doesn't produce better outcomes, it produces shame. And shame, as researcher Brene Brown's data makes clear, is the most corrosive psychological force in human life. Because shame doesn't say, I did something bad, it says, I am something bad. And when you believe you're fundamentally flawed, you don't try harder, you hide, you avoid, you stay exactly where you are. So what's the alternative? Psychologist Kristin Neff at the University of Texas has spent over 2 decades studying this. Her research identifies 3 components that together make up genuine self-compassion. The first is self-kindness. This is just treating yourself with the same basic warmth and decency you would extend to someone you care about. Not flattery, not pretending everything is fine, just not being cruel. The second is common humanity. This is recognizing that suffering, failure, and imperfection are not signs that something is uniquely wrong with you. They are woven into the fabric of being human. And the third is mindfulness. Not meditation necessarily, just the capacity to witness what you're feeling without either suppressing it or catastrophizing it. To say, honestly, this is hard, and hold that truth in balanced awareness rather than fleeing from it or drowning in it. Now, here's what stops most people from taking this seriously. They think self-compassion is self-pity or weakness or arrogance or an excuse not to try. But the research says the opposite is actually true. Neff studies show that people with higher self-compassion take more personal responsibility for their mistakes, not less. They're more motivated to improve, more resilient when things go wrong, and more likely to try again after failure. They have lower anxiety, lower depression, lower shame, and stronger relationships. Why? Because they're not paralyzed by shame. Now you know that you'll meet basic human problems with decency rather than annihilation. You can afford to be honest about them. Here's what I find remarkable. This isn't new. In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus names the two great commandments. And the second one is love your neighbor as yourself. We quote that constantly. We preach it, we post it, but we almost always skip over the most important word, as. Not instead of yourself, not more than yourself, as yourself. The self is the standard. The implied assumption is that you already know what it means to extend love because you have experienced it directed inward. The commandment is a reciprocal standard. And if you've never learned to give love to yourself, you're handing your neighbor something really hollow. Parable of the prodigal son gets at all of this in a slightly different way. When the son hits rock bottom, broke, humiliated, feeding pigs in a foreign country, the text says something remarkable. It says he came to himself. He stopped. He witnessed his own suffering honestly. He didn't spiral into self-loathing and stay in the pig pen. He didn't minimize what had happened either. He held it clearly. He rose and then walked toward grace. Receiving mercy requires something just as active as offering it. And the Father's response, extravagant and unearned and joyful, tells us something about what grace looks like when it meets an honest, open heart. Across traditions, the same truth surfaces. The Buddhist practice of metta, loving kindness, begins with oneself before radiating outward. The Stoics, often caricatured as cold, were sophisticated on this. Marcus Aurelius wrote about living wisely within one's nature, not demanding inhuman perfection from any human being, including yourself. And here's the brain science. Paul Gilbert, the founder of compassion-focused therapy, identifies 3 operating systems in the human brain. There's the threat system, which responds to danger with fight, flight, and freeze. There's the drive system, which pursues goals and rewards. And there's the soothing system, the mammalian caregiving circuit, tied to oxytocin and endorphins, which activates when we feel safe and connected and cared for. Most of us are running almost entirely on threat and drive. We're alarmed or we're achieving, and we wonder why we feel chronically exhausted and never quite okay. But self-compassion activates the soothing system. When you place a hand on your heart and speak to yourself with warmth, it's not performative. Oxytocin is released, cortisol drops, the parasympathetic nervous system engages, the prefrontal cortex comes back online. You shift from survival state into a state where wise, intentional living is actually possible. So here are those 6 practices in order of where to start. Don't try to do all 6 tonight. Start with the first one, add others over the coming weeks. What you're building is not a technique, it's a relationship with yourself. Practice number 1 is the friend swap. The next time you catch yourself in harsh criticism, stop. Ask, if my closest friend came to me in this exact situation, having made this exact mistake, feeling exactly this way, what would I say to them? Write it down. Don't edit it. Write what you would actually say to that person that you love. Then read it back. Insert your own name. Say it to yourself. Most people discover that they would not say to a suffering friend even 20% of what they would say to themselves routinely. Practice number 2 is the self-compassion break, developed by Neff and Germer. 3 steps, 2 minutes, available anywhere. Step 1, stop and say honestly, this is a moment of suffering. This hurts. Don't minimize, don't amplify, just witness it. Step 2, suffering is part of life. Other people feel this too. I'm not alone in this. You're moving from contracted shame to connected humanity. Step 3, place a hand on your heart, feel its warmth, and say, may I be kind to myself right now. May I give myself what I need. Use this after you make a mistake. Use it when you look in the mirror with contempt. Use it after a hard conversation. Repeat this until the 3-step movement becomes your first response, not your last resort. Practice number 3 is loving kindness directed inward. The ancient Buddhist practice of metta begins not with your neighbor, not with a stranger, but with you. So sit quietly, bring yourself to mind, not your ideal self, your actual self. Then offer these 3 phrases silently. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. Notice any resistance that arises. Many people find this genuinely difficult. They have a flinch when they say, may I be happy. An inner voice that says, but I don't deserve that. That's exactly where the work is. So stay there. The practice is not about believing the words immediately. It's about rehearsing the orientation until it becomes yours. Practice number 4 is the compassion journal. Each evening, just spend 10 minutes, 3 prompts. 1, what was hard today? Just be an honest witness, not catastrophizing and not minimizing. Number 2, what would a compassionate friend say to me about this? And 3, what does this difficulty have in common with the struggles of other people? Over weeks, you'll notice that the quality of your inner voice begins to shift. The critic doesn't disappear, but it loses its position as the loudest and only voice in the room. Practice number 5 is the inner critic dialogue. Here's something important. The inner critic is not your enemy. It's usually a frightened protector. It's a part of you that learned, probably early in life, that if you were hard enough on yourself, you could prevent failure, rejection, or shame. When the critic speaks, don't fight it. Don't collapse under it. Just name it. There's the critic again. Then ask it with genuine curiosity, what are you afraid of? What are you trying to protect me from? Then let a wiser, steadier part of yourself respond to that fear. Not you're wrong, but I hear your fear. I can hold that and still move forward with kindness toward myself. This is not a one-time exercise. It's a standing relationship with your own interior. And like any relationship, it matures over time. And finally, practice 6 is soothing touch. This one sounds simple because, to tell you the truth, it is. When you're suffering, place both hands on your heart. Feel the warmth, feel the gentle weight. The body interprets caring touch as safety, and safety is a prerequisite for wisdom. You can do this privately. You can just cross your arms and briefly hold onto your shoulders, or You can do this with someone you trust by reaching out to them in a long, secure hug, or just a simple handhold or a supportive arm. The combination of physical warmth and security reaches parts of your nervous system that purely cognitive practices just don't touch. I want to come back to Mark for a moment. About 4 months into our work together, he came in one day and he said something I won't forget. He said, I had a bad week. I had another grade that didn't go the way I wanted it to. And I noticed for the first time in my life that the first voice I heard wasn't the critic. It was something quieter, something that said, you're human, you're doing well, and you can learn from this. He paused and then he said, I didn't know I was allowed to do that. You are. You are allowed to meet your own struggle with the same decency you would extend without hesitation to anyone else that you love. Not because you've earned it, not because you've gotten everything right, not because you've arrived somewhere, but because you're human. And that is, and has always been, enough of a reason. The person you bring to your work, your family, your relationships, your service to the world, that person is shaped by how you inhabit your own interior. And an interior run entirely by threat and punishment is not a foundation. It's an emergency. So start small. Tonight, try the friend swap. Tomorrow morning, try 30 seconds of loving kindness directed inward. Next week, add the 2-minute break. What you've been building is not just a skill, it's a relationship. The most consequential one in your life with yourself. Tend it accordingly. If this has been useful to you, please share it with someone who needs it. This law or principle of mental health is part of the 28 Laws of Mental Health. You can check out the other 28 laws in the 28 Laws of Mental Health playlist on Principled Therapy. The link to the free printable companion guide to this video is in the description. It has the 6 practices that you learned today. And please subscribe if you want more of this. And I'll see you in the next one.